and if everything that is going wrong in your life is, in fact, a sign that someone is trying to save you. Imagine that on the other side exists a spiritual mentor, a guide who observes you with affection, and that now, seeing you about to take a dangerous path, is doing everything to warn you. But how does this warning reach us in the middle of our so noisy routine? The Spiritist Doctrine, based on the works of Allan Kardec, reveals that this communication is real and constant. They will not appear in the form of a ghost. Their strategy is much more subtle, and it is precisely because of this that most of us end up ignoring it. Prepare yourself, because understanding this can completely change the way you see each obstacle on your path.
So, if the mentors don't appear in the dreams of visionary people to give you a scolding, how exactly do they make that first contact? The answer is in a place that you carry with you everywhere, but that you often ignore: your own conscience. Think about the last time you made a decision that you knew deep down wasn't the best. You went ahead, perhaps even succeeded in some material aspect, but a strange feeling remained, a weight, an uneasiness that doesn't leave you. That, my friend, is much more than simple passing guilt. According to the Spiritist Doctrine, codified by Allan Kardec, this is the most primary and powerful mechanism of communication. Your spirit, your immortal essence, has an internal compass, and the spiritual mentors, these guides who accompany us, have the ability to tune into that compass and amplify its signal.
They work behind the scenes of your mind, strengthening the voice of reason and good sense. It is that clear intuition that says, "Don't go that way," or the instant regret that arises immediately after a petty action. The spirit of Emmanuel, through the works of Chico Xavier, always reinforced that consciousness is the divine temple within us, and the first place where God and the good spirit speak. It is an intimate, private warning that fully respects your free will. They do not shout, they whisper, but it is a whisper that, if ignored, begins to echo louder and louder within your chest, transforming into anxiety, into chronic dissatisfaction, that feeling that you are betraying yourself.
Now reflect. How many times have you attributed this discomfort only to stress, fatigue, or simply tried to stifle it with distractions? We are experts in silencing that voice. We justify our mistakes, rationalize our escapes, and continue forward, even with the feeling that we are rowing against the current of our own evolution. And that's where the situation begins to change levels. Because mentors are persistent, they don't give up on you. When the internal whisper is systematically ignored, their strategy needs to adapt. They realize that the message needs to come from within you and materialize in the world around you, so that you can literally bump into it.
Imagine that your life is a grand stage, and mentors are the directors behind the scenes. They will not step onto the stage and force you off the scene, but they can rearrange some elements of the scenery, bring certain actors to interact with you, or create situations that force a pause for reflection. And it is precisely in that moment that the warnings cease to be just a vague feeling and begin to become concrete events in your life, things that you can no longer ignore because they are there before your eyes, affecting your daily life. But exactly how do they do this? How do they operate this subtle influence in the material world?
It is here that the story becomes profoundly interesting. When the inner voice is stifled, the universe, guided by these superior intelligences, begins to speak through circumstances. You have perhaps noticed how, at times, life seems to put the same obstacles in your path repeatedly. They are not random coincidences. Think of that relationship that always ends in the same painful way, or the pattern of opportunities that slip through your fingers in almost identical fashion. This may be a mechanism of course correction in action. The spiritual mentors, within the strict permission of the divine laws that govern our free will, can influence the fluid fabric that surrounds us, attracting or repelling situations that function as mirrors for our choices. Spirituality does not create suffering, but uses the natural consequences of our deviations to offer us a new chance to see. Joanna de Ângelis, through the medium Divaldo Franco, speaks about trial situations, that are not punishments, but rather opportunities for adjustment. It's as if you were on a dark road, going in the wrong direction, and your mentor, unable to steer the wheel for you, turns on the headlights of a truck coming from the opposite lane, so that you yourself perceive the danger and decide to turn. A book falls from the shelf, exactly what the message you needed to hear. A conversation with strangers on the bus seems to answer directly a doubt that hammered your mind. That project in which you invested so much energy obsessively simply collapses, forcing a pause that you refuse to make. These are signs on the stage of the world, choreographed with loving precision. They do not violate your freedom, but place before you the lessons you need, so that you must interact with them. The mentor can, for example, fluidly move a toxic person away from your convivience, not by magic, but by tuning you to different frequencies, or can attract a friend who, without knowing, will give you the perfect advice at the exact moment. The idea is to create a scenario where the right choice becomes more visible, more clear. But what happens when we are stubborn? When, even with obstacles arising, we insist on pushing through everything, closing our eyes to the warnings that are now public and notorious? What happens when the person looks at the high light of the truck on that dark road and even then steps on the accelerator, determined to continue in error? The patience and creativity of the mentors are put to the test, and they need to resort to an even more direct communication channel, one that accesses our minds when our conscious will finally rests.
We then arrived at the last resource, the most direct of all. When the whisper of consciousness and the signs of the world are ignored, the mentors still have an entry point, our subconscious, during sleep. It is in the silence of the night, when the defenses of the ego lower their guard, that communication can become clearer and more impressive. Recurring and disturbing dreams, those that wake you with a racing heart, are not just the result of a difficult digestion. They can be urgent messages. The spirit André Luiz, in the psychographies written by Chico Xavier, describes with rich detail how the mentors project images, symbols, and primarily feelings into our perispirit, our spiritual body. These fluid impressions cross the barrier of sleep and are translated into vivid scenes or that overwhelming intuition upon waking, a clear, "do not do this," echoing in the mind.
It is a final, loving effort before the most serious consequences of the wrong path materialize in our lives. They can show us, symbolically, the possible outcomes of our stubborn choices. A fall, a dead-end labyrinth, the feeling of being lost, all are powerful metaphors created to warn us. And even awake, a final mechanism comes into action: premonitions. That sudden chill down the spine, a chest pain without physical cause, a sudden certainty of danger. They are the mentors touching our spiritual organization, trying to divert our body from a physical path or our mind from a catastrophic decision. They never control, only illuminate the darkness of our ignorance until the last moment. The final choice, the step to be taken, will always have been and always will be entirely our own. Their mission is to ensure that when we take that step, we know exactly where the ground may fail.